Bay Regional Investment Company. And good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Number 164. 160. And you too get 10 minutes.
Hopefully that will be enough. I'm here this afternoon to speak only to the environmental flows on which Council is consulting. The environmental flows on which you're consulting are not part of any condition precedent for the RWSS. These flows that are proposed to improve river ecosystems in the Tuki catchment can only be provided if the RWSS goes ahead. So you might say the RWSS is actually a condition precedent for the environmental flows. And it's my understanding that from this consultation process you will need to decide whether, if the RWSS goes ahead, whether Council wishes to buy water for environmental purposes in the contract that's been proposed. I want to make 4 points. The first is that councillors have approved both the principle of environmental flows and the quantity is 4 million cubic metres 3 times already in the past. In the terms sheet for the concession deed that was approved by a previous council in 2013. In the draft concession deed, which as councillors you approved, in principle, having taken your own legal advice on that document, which advised you of no showstoppers in 2014, and again, when you approved the business case and investment in the RWSS, subject of course to conditions precedent, because these flows were included in that proposal. My second point is that in what is currently proposed, different from the concession deed, is that you get more water, another 6 million cubic metres worth of water that was not included over the same period if you had applied the concession deed arrangements. And over a significant period of time that water is free and you are able to vary the quantity, so that allows some experimentation about what is an appropriate quantity and where is it best delivered. My third point is that if under the previous arrangements in the concession deed you had in your annual plan consulted and approved for the payment of flows every year, and you had taken and paid for them every year, that would have cost you more over the life of a 35-year contract that is currently proposed than now in the present arrangements. That's because you get 30 million cubic metres worth of water without having to pay for it over that period of time, and that is a substantially larger sum of money that you don't have to pay, in the order of $7 million, which is way larger than the extra that you do have to pay as a consequence of the price increase between 2014 and now, another ½ cent a cubic metre. So in round numbers, you're about $6 million a year better off on a like-for-like comparison if you had taken flow in every year under the previous arrangements. My fourth point, and this may take a little explaining, and that's what this diagram behind me is about, is that perhaps counterintuitively, HBRC's returns, and therefore Council's returns on its investment, are significantly better over the uptake period with the environmental flows taken under a contract than they would be without. And that is true even though over the first 6 years there is no additional revenue paid to the limited partnership. This is a slightly complicated graph. On the left-hand side, which is uptake, it is the proportion of uptake at the beginning of the limited partnership or the RWSS. And this graph, which has a blue line on it, kind of assumes that we started around about 45% of uptake, and over a 15-year period from left to right, the scheme progresses to 100% of uptake. on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, illustratively, these are not the exact numbers, is a scale from 0 to 50%, which represents the sharing of the returns from the RWSS to the two limited partners, the institutional investor and to HBRC. If we start with the solid line on the left, the solid black line, you can see that at the beginning, year 0, HBRC starts with quite a low proportion of the returns to the equity investors. When the blue line hits the lowest of the dashed lines in uptake, there's a threshold point of uptake and a series of them at which the sharing of those returns to HBRC increases. It goes up in a series of step stairs. These are illustrative, they're not the exact amounts because obviously those are confidential to the parties, and there are more of them, more steps than here, but the point of this graph is you can see that when levels of uptake are reached, the sharing of returns to HBRC goes up. Can I have the second one, please? Or what do I need to do? There we go. Thank you. If uptake starts even only slightly higher, and in this graph it starts at 49% instead of 45%, that's the 4 million cubic metres out of 100 million in round numbers, then each of those thresholds is reached earlier. And that brings forward in time each of the step-ups in the returns, the share of the returns to HBRC. So each of the cross-hatched pieces here reflects the extra return that HBRC gets as a consequence of the council, if it chooses to, contracting for the additional 4 million cubic metres of flow. Because those come early, they are more valuable to HBRC because of the time value of money. And surprisingly, because the left to the right side of this diagram is only 15 years wide, 40% of it or so is in the period when there is no more revenue to the RWLP, the limited partnership, because council is not paying for any of that water during that period of time. But nonetheless, each of those step-ups in return to HBRC occurs, and HBRC gets a bigger share of the revenue of the distributions to the limited partners as a consequence of that step-up. So there are 4, I believe, really good reasons why you should do this. Having consulted, the first is, as I said, you've approved this several times over. The second is you're better off in terms of the quantity of water. The third is that you're better off financially directly on a like-for-like basis in terms of what you would pay. And fourthly, you are better off in terms of the returns that you will get via HBRC. If as a consequence of your consultation you decide not to take these flows can only happen if there is the dam built and the RWSS proceeds, I would submit that you will get less environmental benefit than you otherwise could if you took the flows, and you'll be less well off financially, both directly and indirectly.
Thank you. I've got a quick question then, Councillor Graham, but if I could go just first very quickly. You've got 0 to 15 there. I've been trying to get my head round what's the difference in the step up. Can you put any years along there? Is that sort of, or is that just basically a principle about how it would work?
So you can't decide, I can't tell you when those step-ups will occur in terms of time, because they're determined by each level of uptake. So if you looked at this graph, you might think, well, the first threshold is 60% uptake, and the next one might be 70, and the next one might be 80, and the last one might be 90. There's more here. This is to illustrate the principle.
Right. Okay.
But when each of those uptake levels is reached, then there's a step up in our share of the returns.
Very quick question.
Yeah,
20
thank
seconds.
you. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that any new water purchased increases dividends from the project. But how important is this to the institutional investor? Is it a condition precedent to the new investor? Is their investment subject to this happening, or is it just on top?
The very first thing that I said to you was, this is not part of the condition precedent for anybody. It is not part of the condition precedent for anybody.
So
Very clear, we're out of time. I hope that answers your question. We're out of time, sorry. And thank you.
Thank
for
you.
your
Thank you for
presentation,
hearing me
submission, etc., etc. We'll talk again soon, no doubt. Okay, Wairoa District Council, Fergus Power, and His Worship the Mayor, Craig Little.
Thanks, Dan. Is the sound off?
No, it's on.
Okay, can you turn the sound off?
You want me to turn it off?
Just
So just, guys, so we don't, we avoid any confusion at the end, 10 minutes, and it's pretty firm on 10. If you want questions, please fit us in, otherwise the time is yours to use.
Rightio. Hey, look, I'd like to thank Hawke's Bay Regional Council for giving us this opportunity to present. A little bit disappointed with the process to get here. It would be easy not to present than to present. We didn't really find out times till yesterday. We'd had information that was lost, and it was pretty frustrating on our behalf. So, coming from Wairoa, very difficult. So firstly, I'd just like to say the Wairoa District Council wishes to commend the submission of the Wairoa Young Achievers Trust as it relates to the destination project. And also the Wairoa Council wishes to commend the submission of the upstream Wairoa as it relates to the Wairoa Waterfront Enhancement Plan. And I just want to make it quite clear that those two submissions aren't Wairoa District Council submissions. So I think we'd also like to encourage the investigation of the opportunity of a regional park to be established within the district. The regional map that came out completely had Wairoa chopped off by about 2 tera or just past, and I did wonder whether we were part of the regional council. I see it's been changed a little bit more, but Wairoa still chopped off, and I think what we're proposing with the River Enhancement Plan could be a really good opportunity for a bit of a regional park. We've done a lot of the work already with footpaths and with the Tutera Whakaemi treaty claims, and they're coming on board as partners, and there's with us as well as the regional council and DOC in different areas. I think this is a golden opportunity to really start off something great. Your recommendation from your officer is $20,000. We'll take that, but we would love an establishment fee because we feel there's been a lot of neglect in parts of that river for years, and we need a lot of money to get started. But I'll hand you over to Fergus now for our presentation.
Thank you. So this afternoon, I'm here to talk about one of the most exciting projects that Hawke's Bay will have seen in our generation, largely surrounding the predicted beneficial impact of the Rocket Lab orbital launch site operation on the Mahia Peninsula, which Wairoa District has successfully drawn back from Canterbury to the Hawke's Bay region, and it will have regional benefit. So I'd like to go through some of that if we can. The mouse doesn't seem to be working, Leanne. Oh, okay, well, good, sorry. So regional opportunity. This is a regional opportunity to leverage off a project of national significance. Rocket Lab is highly significant. We're looking at an initial launch projection of 12 launches per annum, eventually with an expected launch frequency of twice per week, with a significant VIP visitation level for the region, as well as a large number of space launch tourists expected as well. Obviously, all of this requires an awful lot of planning and teamwork, and we're very pleased that the Regional Council has stepped forward in this area and is substantially funding a tourism project scope, which is widely looking at the benefits of tourism catalysation throughout not only Hawke's Bay but Gisborne District as well, but looking at Rocket Lab as really the seed catalyst for that, given that It's a case here of not build and they will come, they're coming, and we need to make sure that we're building and able to deal with those that are going to be coming through in relation to the Rocket Lab activity. So what sort of things are we talking about here? Well, in the United States, the Florida coast is known as the Space Coast, USA. We now have a Space Coast in New Zealand, and in that Space Coast area, we expect to see considerable tourism associated with rocket launch, ancillary activities associated with that, and a Plan B entertainment project which needs to be rolled out for those visitors who will come to see a launch, but occasionally, of course, launches will be scrubbed or delayed, meaning that those visitors may be held within our region, if not for a day, potentially for 2 or 3 days at a time. The average time that visitors spend at launch sites overseas is nine days, which is an interesting statistic. We're also very keen to see a space science experiential and education centre considered for Wairoa District as well, which will be another anchor element to help bring tourists into the Hawke's Bay region. Obviously, they all need to travel through towards Wairoa. They all need accommodation and transport. They need to be fed, etc., etc. Especially in the early years, Wairoa is not going to be capable of dealing with the anticipated activity. The slide you see here is it's actually a real a website related to the Florida Space Coast. It indicates when a launch is expected, and it gives easy access to people to determine where they can stay, what they can do, etc., etc. If we look at a Space Coast route in Hawke's Bay, here we have a mock-up of a website inviting visitors to the Hawke's Bay region, a number of different activities that can be undertaken. Of course, skydiving, plummeting to the earth as a rocket is speeding up behind you into the stratosphere is probably the ultimate selfie. The date of rocket launch on these slides obviously is mock, it's not real. One of the principal things we're interested in, though, is a Space Coast cycleway, and that's part of our approach to the Regional Council today for funding to assist with that. Again, benefit for the entire region, not just for Wairoa District. I'll just like to pass over to His Worship the Mayor now to reflect on a couple of other matters. Thank you.
Hey, look, like when the Rocket Lab was sort of mooted in that, I was really rapt. The whole of the region came on board behind Wairoa. I think it was the first time the region actually all got together and really supported us. We'd had a pretty, disruptive time before that, and that's all past us. But can I move that on? Yeah, so that's our regional park. So as I mentioned, it'd be great to have a regional park actually up in Wairoa, and part of this in these regional parks, I guess we could have more than one. Now this is interesting enough. There's 9 engines, Rutherford engines on this rocket here that launches. That's the first stage. That's huge horsepower. It's interesting enough, I'm normally in the middle, but since I'm presenting you guys, I put Fenton in the middle. Yeah, absolutely. So there's 9 rockets, huge horsepower, and we've got 9 councillors around this table, huge horsepower if you guys can get behind Wairoa. And I can promise you, you'll all be on board. When the next stage goes, that'll drop off. I don't know how many will survive, but it's a little bit like election time. We don't know who's going to survive. So, yeah, but before election time, I just urge you all to help us. There's some really exciting stuff happening with walkways, cycleways, and just development of Wairoa, something that's never happened before in our time. So, yeah, it's a new beginning for us. So, thank you. Just quickly, Fenton, I also like to commend the Hawke's Bay Regional Council to coming on board with the scoping of the whole project and that. And I'm just assuming that would be a progression that you would hope to come on board with what's going to happen after the scoping as well.
So can I kick off, and thank you for your presentation, the most colourful one today. I'm not sure about that photo in the middle here, but would we be better to wait for the scoping work to be finished before we committed to funding to stuff?
Yeah, definitely, but as long as we don't have to wait for another year, it's going to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah. I appreciate that, but I mean, we're happy to be involved in the scoping. I think it's crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the level of investment that is that the scoping study is likely to indicate is going to be reasonably substantial, and so these sorts of sums are on the very much lower end of the scale, and the beginning of the first year of a multi-year program. Rocket Lab is a company that literally is going places, and as you can imagine, 2 launches a week is going to be absolutely massive, not just from the tourism perspective, but other ways as well.
Right, a minute there, a couple of questions. Councillor Bevan.
How soon are they expecting to get up to 2 a week? What's the estimate of the time frame?
The difficulty, as you know, there are a number of space projects that are underway around the world at the moment, and the difficulty is in acquiring well-trained aerospace engineers. So Rocket Lab has actually stopped taking orders at this point in relation to some of its activities. They're fully booked up for the next 2 years. The sooner that they're able to ramp up their capability, the better.
I've just got one more. Sorry, I've got one more question.
That'll be the last one.
Can you just remind me, Paul, with rates increases, $100,000 is what percent?
1% is 150.
Okay, 1% is 150. Now you're asking us to put 1.1 million here, and there's another $100,000 from the trust earlier, so that would represent.
Please don't put the 2 together.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking Wairau, and I'm thinking that's a very high percentage rate increase, and it might not be realistic to expect us. Do you have a priority from this list?
Well, I look at it this way. I'd like it all done, but I just think, and I think of this way, and I know I'm not allowed to mention the dam, but a lot of money is getting spent down this end, and we're missing out. And I don't think all the ratepayers are attributing that percentage getting spent, back to them.
Priority.
Yeah, priority, get it all done.
That's a great way to finish.
Yeah.
Your Worship. Straight through the middle. Beautiful. Okay, and thank you very much for your presentation,
Thank you.
Your Worship. And it's good to have a worship here, actually, for the
Hey, a
day.
lot different on this side of the table than the other, and I guess it's a bit like in a pub, really, isn't it?
Yeah, probably,
One
yeah.
bar's a lot different than the other.
Don't go to the pub.
Thank you.
Be worried if you saw worship in the pub, Your Worship. Okay, next we have Clint Deckard. Is Clint here? Yeah, I thought he was here. Yeah. Welcome. You're welcome to use that PowerPoint if it's any use to you, but probably got a copyright on it. Okay, 10 minutes. You've been watching a bit today, so you understand how we do it, and etc. 10 minutes. If you want some questions, please give us some time in your 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I've never come before a council before, and I've certainly never put in a submission to a council before. But this issue, particularly the environmental flows, is one that's forced me to take a stand and to take some action. Earlier this year, I had the pleasure of sharing my community's experience with irrigation with most of the councillors here. 3 councillors didn't make it, unfortunately. And I appreciate the time that they took and their generosity to come out and see our community. One part that we didn't get to see at my property, I'm very lucky that I have direct access to the Tuki River. And we're very fortunate that our access to the Tuki River is before most of the damage is done to it, and we have a pristine river that we've enjoyed swimming in for many, many years. My wife, her mother, and her mother before her have all enjoyed the river. So it's very important to us. And I'm here mainly for my children, because the decisions that you're going to make tomorrow is going to affect my children, probably more than it will affect me.
Could you just pull the microphone slightly closer?
Sure, sorry. Yes, your decisions is going to affect my children more than it is going to affect me. And it's certainly my hope that my children will have the opportunity to share the river with their children, and so on. And if the minimum water standard is simply to be wadeable, then the prospects are not great that their or my grandchildren will be able to swim in that river. In my submission, I supported option C. I thought the submission process was very odd. I work in IT. I think the technical term for the software that you use to organise your submissions is called crapware. It was difficult to follow. Help said use the pencil icon. You can't see a pencil icon. That's by the by. My main concern is that if you choose option A, then you become a water trader. The one government arm that I can rely on to look after our water quality for my children is this regional council. Taking on water and becoming a trader opens the possibility that should you have to investigate or prosecute a farming operation, there's every possibility that that farming operation could also be a customer of your water, which introduces enormous problems and conflicts of interests and perceptions of conflicts of interests, none of which I think, certainly anything that I've read, has addressed that at all. It diminishes my faith in the regional council to be able to protect this very precious resource. Dairy expansion is already a reality in our area. Just across the river from us, a sheep and beef farm is now dairy. Paddocks right next to the river, centimetres above the water level, with nothing between them but a fence, that for years have had nothing but sheep in them, now have hundreds of dairy cattle. I'm worried about our quality of water. I think this process, the fact that it was originally wasn't even seen as significant to require public consultation, I think our children can deserve better than this. And I hope that you do listen to the public submissions that have been put in. But listening to Dr. Pearce, it seems that I'm wasting my time here. Apparently you've made your decision. Well, he seems to think so.
Not in this round.
Okay. All right, well, there you go. There's my submission. Any questions?
Obviously, the water quality is important to you, though, isn't it? Even though you've chosen C here for a very good point that you've raised about trading. But swimmability and the quality of the river is important.
Absolutely.
We established that. Yeah, okay. Other questions? Councillor Scott.
Follow up on that, and should the WSS go ahead, and only should, if it should, and we have the opportunity of accessing stored water, which comes at a cost, can you see benefit in environmental and biodiversity projects in accessing that water?
I'd like to see the research and the science and the input from the experts around that to show that whatever amount of water that you've chosen, how often, does actually deliver that. All we've seen are made-up graphs like Dr. Pearce showed that don't even show the reality. They're just...
So I'm not talking about, I'm talking purely about biodiversity and environmental projects.
It may well do, and when you've got a good, solid scientific case to purchasing water for specific reasons, then that would be the time to choose to do that.
And so you would support them paying at the spot price for that water?
If it made economic sense, yes. The water may well be far cheaper in the future if nobody wants it.
It's hard logic to argue against. Yeah, Councillor.
Okay. I see you've supported C like the overwhelming majority of submitters. Do you believe this council should be guided by the advice and the views of submitters? And what would you think of this council if it chose to ignore the overwhelming majority of submitters and make another decision?
Yes, I do believe that the council should take heed of the submissions that have been put forward. Recent history would suggest that the chance of that is not great. It would diminish my faith in this group even further. As I said, I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of you, and I know you're all good people, but I think as an organisation, as a group, there is some dysfunction here, and I'm not certain of, or confident of the quality of the outcome. If you decide not to, well, I would expect there'll be an outcry.
Another question?
There's no other questions. Yes, Councillor.
Given that this matter we consider here is 35 million, 36 million, however you want to calculate it, some would make it $40 million. Do you think we should have, this council should have embarked on a thorough piece of analysis, cost-benefit analysis, comparing the benefits of what was proposed in the Tukituki River for expending $36 million, for which there's no scientific report to support it, as compared to spending $36 million in the lower Naroro or on the Wairau River? Shouldn't you think we would have done that sort of work to justify spending $36 million first before choosing a winner?
Had you done that, I would have had a lot more confidence in the outcome of your deliberations, and I probably would not be here submitting right now. When I spoke to a councillor just a few months ago, questioning the huge amount of money that the council was investing, she reassured me that it was an investment and that people into the future are going to reap the benefits of that investment, and that might be environmental, or it might even be a reduction in rates. Clearly, in the course of a couple of months, they've changed their mind, and that it's going to be water. And that decision for future people, for future generations and ratepayers to decide what to do with the dividends from this project has been taken from them.
All right.
Further questions? You wish to another comment, or you're done? Thank you very much for your
Please
submission.
may I go now?
You may go now.